Ladies and gentlemen, today we examine how the suspect connected to Charlie Kirk was caught in detail. This was not an act of chance. It was the result of disciplined intelligence, relentless pursuit, and unwavering commitment to justice. The operation began with precise surveillance. Every movement, every signal, and every lead was tracked with sharp attention to detail. The suspect believed escape was possible, but surveillance teams tightened the circle step by step, leaving no gap for error. Once the intelligence was verified, the mission shifted to execution. A strategic plan was set in motion. Swift, coordinated, and calculated, law enforcement and investigators moved as one force, eliminating risks and ensuring no collateral harm. The suspect was confronted, overwhelmed by the precision of the operation, and taken into custody without delay. The aftermath is a reminder that justice is never idle. The capture is not only about one suspect, but about the signal it sends. Accountability is inevitable, and vigilance must remain constant. This case shows us that with discipline, coordination, and decisive action, no suspect can outrun justice. That is how the Charlie Kirk suspect was caught, through intelligence, strategy, and the unyielding pursuit of truth. Intelligence gathering was the cornerstone of how the Charlie Kirk suspect was caught. From the very beginning, every effort was focused on building a clear picture of the suspect's movements, associations, and digital footprint. This was not a quick process. It demanded patience, discipline, and the steady collection of data from multiple sources. Surveillance units monitored communication channels, reviewed travel patterns, and pieced together fragments of information that, when combined, created a detailed map of the suspect's behavior. The strength of intelligence work lies not in sudden breakthroughs, but in the steady accumulation of facts that eventually reveal the truth. Surveillance on the ground complemented the intelligence work. Teams operated with precision, blending into environments and maintaining constant watch without ever alerting the suspect. Each step, from observing daily routines to identifying unusual deviations, was carefully logged and cross-checked with existing intelligence. This dual layer of monitoring, digital and physical, ensured that no lead was overlooked. The suspect may have believed they were moving unnoticed, but every action was being documented with quiet, relentless focus. In high stakes investigations, it is this persistence in surveillance that turns uncertainty into clarity. The value of intelligence and surveillance is not just in tracking a suspect, but in shaping the strategy for the next stage of the operation. By the time the suspect's location was confirmed, authorities had built a level of certainty that eliminated guesswork. This preparation allowed the capture team to act with confidence, knowing they were moving at the right time and in the right place. Without such disciplined intelligence and methodical surveillance, the operation could have faced risks, delays, or even failure. Instead, the framework of information became the decisive advantage, proving once again that success begins long before the moment of arrest. It begins in the quiet, unseen work of intelligence gathering. Once the intelligence framework was complete, the focus shifted to strategy. Planning an operation of this magnitude required precision, coordination, and absolute clarity of purpose. Every detail, from the timing of movements to the placement of personnel, was carefully mapped out to minimize risk and maximize success. Leaders understood that execution without strategy can create chaos, so they invested time in building a plan that accounted for every possible scenario. Contingencies were prepared, routes were calculated, and communication channels were secured to ensure unity of effort. Strategy, in this case, was not about bold moves. It was about disciplined foresight that left nothing to chance. Execution began when intelligence confirmed that the suspect was within reach. At that point, the operation transitioned from planning to action with a sense of urgency, but also with control. Teams were deployed with precise timing, each unit knowing its role and responsibility. The strength of the operation lay in synchronization. When every element moves together, no single part is left exposed. As the operation advanced, the coordination among units reflected countless hours of preparation. The suspect had no opportunity to anticipate the net closing in because every movement was designed to be swift, silent, and overwhelming. Central to the success of the operation was discipline under pressure. In real-world scenarios, unexpected challenges always arise: traffic delays, sudden changes in the suspect's behavior, or environmental obstacles. What distinguished this operation was the ability of the teams to adapt without breaking formation. Orders were followed with precision, but initiative was also trusted at the ground level. This balance of discipline and flexibility ensured that the mission could absorb shocks without losing focus. When the suspect attempted to shift course, the operation adjusted seamlessly, closing off escape routes and maintaining control. Another decisive factor was the choice of timing. Capturing a suspect requires more than knowing where they are. It requires knowing when to move. Timing is what determines whether the suspect is isolated, whether civilians are safe, and whether resistance can be neutralized without escalation. In this case, the operation was launched at a moment when the suspect was most vulnerable and least able to react. The swiftness of the execution left no room for resistance, and the suspect was overwhelmed before any defensive move could be attempted. Timing turned strategy into victory. The culmination of the operation demonstrated what happens when intelligence, strategy, and execution converge. The capture was not marked by chaos or uncertainty, but by efficiency and control. Every phase had been anticipated, rehearsed, and reinforced by discipline. The suspect was taken into custody with minimal disruption, proving that decisive action, when supported by strategy, delivers results. The lesson here is clear operations succeed not because of force alone, but because of the structure, order, and unity that drive execution. This capture stands as an example of what can be achieved when planning and execution are aligned with absolute precision. The capture of the Charlie Kirk suspect did not end with handcuffs. In fact, the aftermath was just as important as the operation itself because it marked the transition from action to accountability. Once in custody, the suspect became part of a broader system of justice where evidence, testimonies, and legal processes would determine the outcome. The smooth transfer from tactical control to judicial oversight reflected the professionalism of the entire operation. Justice is not measured solely by capture, but by what follows. And in this case, the process ensured that the suspect would face the rule of law without delay. One of the most important lessons from this case is the value of preparation. The operation succeeded because of the discipline and structure that preceded the arrest. Every move, every decision, and every contingency had been considered in advance, leaving no room for improvisation that could lead to failure. In the aftermath, analysts reviewed the process to highlight how preparation transformed uncertainty into certainty. Future operations will benefit from this example because it demonstrates that careful groundwork is not optional, it is essential to success. Another key takeaway lies in the power of coordination. No single team or unit could have achieved this result on its own. It was the combined effort of intelligence officers, surveillance teams, field operatives, and judicial authorities that made the mission possible. The aftermath highlighted how critical interagency cooperation is in high-stakes cases. Lessons learned emphasize that unity of effort is not a slogan. It is the operational backbone that determines whether a suspect escapes or is brought to justice. Public perception also formed an important part of the aftermath. When word of the capture spread, it reinforced confidence in law enforcement and investigative agencies. Citizens saw proof that justice does not turn a blind eye and that those who believe they can evade accountability will eventually be caught. Maintaining this trust is essential because public cooperation and confidence often provide the foundation for future intelligence gathering. The aftermath taught us that every successful operation strengthens not only the justice system, but also the relationship between agencies and the people they serve. The operation also revealed the importance of timing and communication. Details of the capture were released to the public in a controlled manner, ensuring transparency without compromising security or ongoing investigations. This balance showed how vital it is to manage information responsibly. Lessons learned from this aspect stress that communication must be truthful, measured, and strategic because careless disclosures can jeopardize both security and trust. Another critical lesson came from reviewing risks and challenges encountered along the way. Every operation has obstacles, and no mission is flawless. Analysts examined points where the suspect nearly slipped away or where unexpected events could have derailed the operation. By identifying these vulnerabilities, authorities strengthened their ability to adapt and improve for the future. The aftermath thus became more than a conclusion. It became a training ground for better practices, sharper strategies, and improved resilience. Finally, the overarching lesson is that justice is a process, not a moment. The capture of the Charlie Kirk suspect was a decisive step, but it also reinforced the ongoing need for vigilance. Criminals adapt, suspects evolve, and new challenges will always arise. What matters is the determination to remain prepared, disciplined, and united in pursuit of accountability. The aftermath serves as a reminder that the work of justice never ends. It is a continuous mission that demands consistency, courage, and the unshakable belief that no one is beyond the reach of the law.